Welcome, everyone, and I need to share something with you today that might completely change how you see yourself and your relationships with others. If you constantly feel like you're giving more than you're receiving, if your day starts with thoughts about other people's needs and ends with emotional exhaustion, then this is exactly what you need to hear right now. Being an empath is a gift, but it can also become a burden if we don't learn to manage it properly.
Today, we're going to uncover the untold truth about how empaths go through a life-changing transformation, from constant overgiving through painful awakening, all the way to finding true balance. This is a story lived by millions of people around the world, yet so few talk about it openly. Stay with me until the end because what I'm about to reveal might just be the missing piece you've been searching for all along.
Let's start by understanding what it really means to be an empath. You see, empaths aren't just people who care deeply about others. They're individuals who literally feel the emotions of those around them as if they were their own. Imagine walking into a room and immediately sensing the tension between two people who haven't even spoken yet. Picture yourself sitting next to someone on a bus and suddenly feeling waves of sadness wash over you, only to realize it's not your sadness at all. That's the empath experience. It's like having emotional antennas that are constantly picking up signals from everyone within your radius.
In the early stages of an empath's journey, there's typically a phase of complete unawareness. Most empaths grow up not understanding why they feel so different from everyone else. As children, they might have been labeled as too sensitive, too emotional, or too caring. Perhaps you remember being that kid who couldn't watch sad movies without crying for hours, or the one who always tried to fix conflicts between friends, even when it wasn't your place to do so.
These empaths learn early on that their value comes from being helpful, from being the shoulder everyone cries on, from being the one who always has time to listen. This leads us to the overgiving phase. And this is where things get truly challenging. Empaths in this stage become people pleasers extraordinaire. They say yes when they mean no, they sacrifice their own needs, dreams, and desires to accommodate everyone else. They become the unofficial therapist for their entire friend group, the unpaid counselor for family members, the emotional dumping ground for colleagues. And here's the devastating part. They often do this with a smile, convincing themselves that this is just who they are, that this is their purpose. The empath starts to build their entire identity around being needed by others. They become addicted to the feeling of being helpful, of being the person others turn to in times of crisis. But underneath this seemingly noble exterior, something sinister is happening. The empath is slowly losing themselves. Their own emotions get buried under layers and layers of other people's feelings. They stop knowing what they actually want because they've spent so long focusing on what everyone else needs. Their boundaries become non-existent because they've been taught that having boundaries is selfish. What makes this phase particularly dangerous is that society reinforces this behavior. We celebrate self-sacrifice. We glorify people who put others first. We tell empaths that their sensitivity is their superpower, without teaching them that superpowers need to be controlled and channeled properly. So the empath continues giving and giving, slowly depleting their own reserves, running on fumes, wondering why they feel so empty despite doing so much good for others.
Then comes the crash, and it always comes. This is the moment when the empath's carefully constructed world starts to crumble. Maybe it's a friend who takes advantage of their kindness one too many times. Perhaps it's a romantic partner who exploits their empathetic nature without any reciprocation. It could be a family member who demands more and more emotional labor without ever acknowledging the toll it takes.
Or sometimes it's simply the empath's own body and mind saying enough is enough, manifesting as anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, or mysterious physical ailments that doctors can't quite explain.
This crash is brutal. It's confusing. The empath looks around and realizes that despite all their giving, they feel lonelier than ever. They notice that many of their relationships are one-sided. They understand, often for the first time, that people have been taking advantage of their generous nature. The pain of this realization is profound because it forces the empath to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their overgiving wasn't always coming from a pure place.
Sometimes it was coming from a need to be needed, from a fear of being abandoned, from a deep-seated belief that they're only valuable when they're useful to others. This is where the awakening begins. And let me tell you, it's not a pretty process. Awakening for an empath means learning to say no, and that first no feels like the hardest thing they've ever done. It means establishing boundaries with people who've never experienced boundaries from them before, which often results in confusion, anger, or accusations of the empath being selfish or changed. It means sitting with their own emotions for once, instead of constantly processing everyone else's feelings. It means getting comfortable with the discomfort of potentially disappointing people. During this awakening phase, empaths often go through what I call the hermit stage. They withdraw from social situations. They reduce contact with energy vampires and toxic relationships. They create space for themselves to heal, to rediscover who they are beneath all those layers of people-pleasing behaviors. This withdrawal isn't depression, although others might misinterpret it as such. It's actually a necessary part of the healing process. The empath is essentially reparenting themselves, learning lessons they should have learned much earlier about self-worth, self-care, and healthy emotional boundaries. The transformation that happens during this awakening is remarkable. The empath starts to understand that feeling other people's emotions is different from taking responsibility for those emotions. They learn that they can be compassionate without being a doormat. They discover that true empathy includes empathy for themselves. They realize that the most loving thing they can do is to show others how to handle their own emotional experiences, rather than always swooping in to fix everything. As the empath continues this journey, they develop what I call discernment. They become selective about where they invest their emotional energy. They learn to distinguish between people who genuinely need help and people who are simply looking for someone to enable their dysfunction. They understand that not every problem is theirs to solve, not every person is theirs to save, and not every emotional burden is theirs to carry. This discernment is powerful because it allows the empath to help others from a place of genuine desire rather than obligation or fear. The transformed empath looks very different from the overgiving empath. They still care deeply. They're still sensitive to others' emotions. They still want to make the world a better place. But now they do it with wisdom. They understand that they can't pour from an empty cup. They know that self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. They've learned that the best way to help others is to first ensure their own well-being. They've discovered that saying no to things that don't serve them means they can say a more wholehearted yes to things that do. This transformation isn't a destination, it's an ongoing journey. Even transformed empaths have moments where they slip back into old patterns. They might occasionally overextend themselves or struggle with guilt when setting boundaries. But the difference is that now they catch themselves. They have tools and awareness that help them course correct before they completely deplete themselves again. They've built a foundation of self-awareness that serves as their compass, always guiding them back to balance. So there you have it.
the untold truth about how empaths transform over time. It's a journey from unconscious overgiving through painful awakening to conscious, balanced empathy. It's not an easy path, but it's a necessary one for any empath who wants to live authentically and sustainably. If you recognized yourself in this story, know that you're not alone. Millions of empaths worldwide are going through or have gone through this exact transformation.
Your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's a strength that just needs proper channeling. Remember, the goal isn't to stop being empathetic, it's to be empathetic in a way that honors both others and yourself. If this resonated with you, please share it with another empath who might need to hear this message. Leave a comment telling me where you are in your empath journey. And don't forget to subscribe because we'll be diving deeper into these topics in future videos.
Until next time, remember that taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's sacred. Take care.